to recognize, as we do, that what is going to finally turn the employment situation around is private enterprise hiring more people. We're beginning to see a little of that. Just yesterday, the reports that Home Depot is beginning to hire again across the country. They've made a decision. Those are the first signs, and we wanted to accelerate that. So the last legislation we passed in this regard was called the Hire Act, and it provides tax credits for private employers to hire individuals, because the final long-term solution is for private enterprise to begin to hire again, and we wanted to provide incentive for that. The other aspect of that bill was additional funding for the Highway Trust Fund. And trust me, we're going to need it. As I've driven around the state the last several days, I have seen places, and there's one over the Pawcatuck River in South County where the bridge was totally engulfed by the water, and now you can't use it, but when you go to the other side, it literally looks like a 500-pound bomb was dropped. There's a crater about 10 feet, concrete. That has to be prepared. We were in Bristol today. They have a major problem in terms of mitigating floods with a conduit that runs several miles from up near their public works department down to the bay. So this infrastructure money will come extremely useful for us now anyway, but particularly. So that was a response to try to move the economy in the right direction and then accelerate job growth, which is, I think, the final measure of what we should be about. But there were other long-term issues that we had to deal with. And there was, frankly, a debate in Washington about whether we should get involved in these issues, particularly with health care reform. Because there were some that were urging caution, saying we should just do economic issues, do financial reform. But the decision was made to go forward, and the long term, I think it's going to have significant effects. And I think in the longer run, it's going to be a huge benefit to the country. One point that should be noted, the Health Care Act that we have passed is the first deficit reduction legislation passed since 1997. About $138 billion the first 10 years, and over $1 trillion in the next 10 years. But up until from 1997 to the health care bill, there was no significant deficit reduction passed in Congress. Some of the things that are going to happen immediately with respect to health care, within the first 6 months, children cannot be denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. If you have a child who's 26 years or younger, they can remain on your family plan, which is good news to lots of people. I was in Newport today talking to construction workers. They just had 2 children graduate from college without health care, so they'll get health care. Last week I was in Iraq talking to General Odierno. He pointed out that for the first time in his life, since he went to West Point at 17, he had to buy insurance for his son. That was complicated, expensive, etc. So I asked him how old he was. He said, he's 25. He said, don't worry, at least for a year. So he even appreciated that. So one other aspect I think is important in the immediate future. Starting in the spring of 2011, next spring, small businesses will receive tax credits for the health care they provide their workers. Companies with 25 or fewer employees will receive a 35% tax credit, and you'll also be able to deduct your expenses. So you have actually 2 ways to sort of use the tax system to help you purchase insurance. It will be on a sliding scale based on the size of the company and the average wage. So for most small businesses in this state, there are thousands of them that are at 25 or fewer employees. You'll, for the first time, be getting significant help with your purchase of health insurance. Now, this is all a prelude to 2014, in which the exchanges go into effect, where individual responsibility and employer responsibility provisions go into effect. But for individuals and for employers, they will continue to be tax assistant, tax credit assistant. In the case of individuals, we've tried to structure this so that there will be a graduated subsidy extending up to families of 4 with $88,000 of income. And that, given the nature of Rhode Island, is probably most of the population. Not only will we have the opportunity to choose a plan, and there will be at least 2 plans that are negotiated by the Office of Personnel Management, federal department, who do the negotiation for all the federal plans. So there will be at least 2 plans that are negotiated by them on the exchange. Now the reality today of Rhode Island, and I'll have to tell most anyone, is we really don't have much choice. There are 2 companies, Blue Cross and United. Tufts is down here, but it's 80% of the market is controlled by Blue Cross and Tufts. Now they try to do a good job, but that's not exactly an example of choice in terms of fitting your needs. There will be much more choice. In fact, simply with those 2 mandated plans, you'll double the choices you have right now, effectively. So this is going to take, obviously, a while to look through and work out, and that's why many of the figures are not until 2014. It has to be done. My sense is, state by state, you see states like Massachusetts that already have essentially universal coverage, move very quickly, set up their exchanges, start operations. We'll learn from them. So by the time we're ready to go, we'll have seen examples of this process in action. And that, I think, will be helpful. That's one aspect going forward in terms of dealing with the economy. And just a final point about the healthcare reform. This issue, in terms, not just in terms of social policy, but economic policy, was absolutely critical. And we have heard for years, unless we could make significant changes in health care, the sheer growth of entitlements, Medicare, Medicaid, would eventually overwhelm us. We've now, for the first time, taken a step that's going to begin, we hope, to bend this cost curves, and from a financial point of view, help us invest in other endeavors, not simply healthcare. Another area I think is fairly important going forward for the economy, and that's energy policy. A lot of the Recovery Act was devoted to try to stimulate new alternative energy throughout the country. There is, I think, also, too, a market reaction going on. The popularity of hybrid vehicles, which 3 or 4 years ago were nice, but now more and more people are buying their hybrids. The idea of fully electric cars, that is what GM and others are banking on in terms of their economic renaissance. There are examples across the country and across the world of new innovative ways of transportation. In Israel, they are taking a countrywide approach where they are putting in charging stations in all their public parking areas, where you can drive in, plug your car in as you go to work. Not only will you be charged, but the excess, and I don't know how they do this technically, but the excess energy is pulled into the grid, so you're actually supplying the grid. But the ability to innovate, the ability to do these things is absolutely essential. Of course, here in Rhode Island, the proposals for offshore wind, I think, are a step in the right direction. They're going to help us immensely in terms of our economic competitiveness. The other aspect of this, too, is a better transportation system, public transportation system. In that regard, we'll break ground shortly for a train station in Whitford, so that you can go across the bridge and in 10 or 15 minutes get the train all the way up to Providence and to Boston. I think that's going to be a tremendous economic development incentive for the area. People now will have more choices in terms of commuting back and forth between Boston or stopping short in Providence or 128. That is going to happen shortly. It's going to connect with the train station, the new train station at the airport, go to Providence all the way up. So that's something, and that was done prior to the stimulus package. That's been in the works now for several years, but it's an example of something we have.